Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back. Chase Thomas podcast with the great ATL and 29, the most NPR type Atlanta Hawks podcast that I love. It's just very calm. It's very soothing. It's a show that should have my favorite. Like, I'm a big jazz guy, Kevin, and I want some Miles Davis in the background. I want some Bill Evans trio in the background because it's just nice. Like, it's just like they're having a really nice time talking about a team that cannot play like a defense, and it's nice. It makes me feel better. I watch the Hawks and I'm just like, I'm not sure who they can defend, but you know, Jalen Johnson gone for a month hasn't been great. Don't like that, but I listen to ATL and 29 and they're nice. It's just a nice podcast. That's how I would describe it, Kevin.
I appreciate you plugging the podcast like that. I am a devoted night owl. My wife works nights, and Glenn is on the West Coast, so we record at midnight, 1 a.m. East time. So it's too late at night to be anything but chill. Like, if I get too upset that late at night, it's not good. It's not healthy. So we got to have that relaxed vibe for sure.
I mean, when you throw in Brad sometimes, and he's just always even keeled Brad. Like, I'm waiting for the point. Like, I don't know what year it's going to take on the Hawks beat for Brad to really become the take guy. I don't know what year it's going to take for him, but everything's mild mannered. I want to Brad unleash the venom Brad at some point on one of these podcasts, because it's all nice. It's just, everything's delightful, and it's just I very much enjoy it when Brad pops in and I'm like, man. It's I need something to spice it up. I need some spice. I need someone to be like, actually, DeAndre Hunter, DMPCD. Let's get him out of here. Let's start getting let's get some stuff like that in there. I'm ready to eject on the DeAndre Hunter experience. It's not that kind of podcast, which I like.
Yeah, we're trying to be, analytical and even keeled and not fall prey to the whims of the win a game, lose a game.
I take notes. Like, it's a podcast where you can take notes, because I listen, especially to Glenn. Like, he's just such a good ball knower, and I very much enjoy his insight, and it calms me down a lot of times when I'm just after the game. You'll like want to go take a walk, and you're like, oh, like the I guess what was it, 2 Fridays ago against the Sixers, that was just brutal. DeAndre Hunter, like, speaking of Hunter, actually getting really upset, and when DeAndre Hunter gets that upset, it's not a good call, and it was pretty wild. But that was like a winnable game, and just, you're like, what do you do with Joel Embiid? It was one of those where Joel just was able to do whatever, and it was hard to get mad. But that's just kind of how I felt this whole Hawks season, Kevin, to bring it all back to the Hawks, which is about 500 feels right to me. Like, it doesn't feel, when you're watching week to week and you look at the personnel and you see with, Trey obviously getting a little bit better, hitting some floaters more now. Obviously 45-10 and was awesome last night against the Spurs. But what was this about what you expected before the year, that they'd be about a 500 team if they kept the roster as is?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's fair that they had about a 500 record. I think if you look at the advanced statistics just based on who they've played and what kind of outcomes they've had, I think that they're projecting a little bit beyond that. But just in terms of wins and losses, they're at 500. They haven't really had a devastating loss yet where you say, well, that's a god-awful team to lose to. Like, they almost had that last night with the Spurs. Yeah. But even in that game, it's like, other than turnovers, the Spurs were playing pretty well. Like, they were doing a good job cutting. They were, just doing some incredible shot making from three. So it was like, even that, would have been bad loss to a 3-14 team. But if you actually watch the tape, it's like, well, if they're just going to make every 3-pointer, then you tip your cap and say, okay, go ahead, shoot 55% from three. And yeah, so they're about right. They have to fix stuff defensively and keep Trey in the groove that he's in now, and then they're going to be a better team than what they are. Then they're a mid-Eastern Conference playoff team. But the thing that they've really got to figure out is, they're playing a defense that's a very aggressive defense, lots of showing, lots of the center being high up in the pick and roll actions, and that pulls them away from the basket. And that leaves them with two problems. One is defensive rebounding. If Jalen Johnson gets healthy, that helps a lot of that, because they just need a big rebounding power forward. And they have that in Jalen Johnson. They don't have John Collins now because he's in Utah. But with Jalen Johnson is healthy, then they can kind of get that. If the big is up, you've got his rebounding four, who's probably the second best rebounder on the team behind Capella. And then the other thing they've got to figure out is, okay, you've got the big up, you've constantly pulling in the defender on the weak side, who's the low man. He's got to be close to under the basket, and a lot of times that's a guard, sometimes it's a forward. But when they do that, they're getting absolutely chomped up on back cuts, like worst in the league by like a standard deviation. Like they're just not good at that. And they have to have better awareness. I don't know. I want to ask Quin Snyder when they're back in Atlanta, like, how do you get more aware? Do you have to have your defender who's under the rim, like watching two things at the same time? Do you need somebody telling him in his ear, hey, cut? What is it so that guy who's there zoning up sort of the weak side, trying to protect the rim, trying to, be the blocker in the paint, when, cutters and guys come down the lane, like he's got to be more aware of the one coming in from the backside. And right now they're just not, and they're terrible at it. And there are a couple of culprits. Right now, Saddiq Bey is a big culprit for that. He's got to be better. He's got to work on a couple of things. One is, being more aware of where these cuts are coming from, and then just the nuances of position, like being 2 feet to the left or to the right makes a big difference in that situation. He doesn't look entirely comfortable yet. So hopefully with more reps, better recognition, he will get more comfortable in that. Where right now it doesn't look particularly good, and it makes the absence of Jalen Johnson hurt that much more.
Yeah, and it's just also like your expectations or what's realistic. Is that really realistic for Saddiq Bey? And based on what we've seen from him to this point in the career, he's still not an old, like what is he, 24, 23? What is Saddiq at this point?
I want to say he's in his 4th season. I'm not sure about age.
Okay. At that point, like 4th season in the NBA, is he going to become like a great defender? Probably not. That probably is not going to be a thing. It's just a little bit better. Like you said, the 2 feet, just incrementally a little bit more than what we've gotten to this point.
Yeah, like he might not be a great defender, but he has to be better in that situation.
Yeah.
And this might be his first season in that specific type of situation, like that. He probably hasn't been in a scheme that has done it this much. I know with the Hawks last year, he wasn't in this situation as much as he is now, which is like, 50% of the plays that he's on the court. Like, I know it wasn't like that for him last season. So I do think reps are important, even if he has some NBA experience. It's just not something they've done that much of up until this point.
What did you see? Because Jalen, I think, has been the story this year. Up until the injury, what Jalen was doing, I did not see coming. Like, I was pretty high on AJ Griffin in that pick and what we saw last year. And it seems like, to this point, at least, Jalen's the big winner from the Quin hire, and AJ's probably the big loser to this point. And things can change, but it just seems like it was going to go one of two ways with those two guys, because it's just, there's only so many minutes, there's only so many opportunities, and someone's going to, especially with Collins moving on, it just kind of opened the door, because AJ just can't play that stretch four at this point in his career. Maybe he doesn't grow into that kind of size and that kind of ability, but Jalen just took off, and it was something like we didn't really see. We saw maybe inklings last year. I don't know if you saw, but that's what I'm curious about, because did I miss something with Jalen that this was coming, that he could become? I mean, there's all-star potential with Jalen Johnson based on what we saw before the injury. I mean, what did you see about Jalen before this year, and what do you think he can still evolve and even get better at when he comes back from injury?
I don't think there are too many surprises, because I do think that the starting points were there. Like, we knew he was a great rebounder. Like, he just high points the ball beautifully. We knew that he's got great vision when he's looking for teammates, and he's got very good handles, especially in the open floor and transition. Like, I do think that he's like a top 2% player, even among NBA players, in transition, just in terms of how good he is with handles, how good he is with passing, and how physical he can be when he gets to the rim. Like, he is just going to go over you, go through you. He's going to find a way to get to the rim in transition. So I think we knew all of those things. I think what we didn't know, and what might be a little bit of surprise, I think the biggest thing is shooting. I think if you watched him with the Hawks, he played a lot. I'm sitting here in College Park right now. Like, if you watched him, he got a lot of reps with College Park a couple of seasons ago. He didn't look like this kind of shooter. Like, even if you just watch him in warmups, it'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to come. And now you watch him, and it's like, where did this come from? Like, it's just beautiful balance. He's got this nice sort of He gets under the ball. Like, it's just a beautiful jump shot. And that,
Have you asked him about what happened there?
I haven't. No, I haven't gotten to that yet.
No.
It's on the to-do list.
Okay. So that's
No,
curious.
it's
Yeah.
perfectly reasonable. And I think the other thing is we were just talking about Sadiq.
Mm.
Jalen has unbelievable physical tools. Like, he's just bigger than Sadiq, and he just covers a lot of ground if he has to be two places at once. But just the overall awareness when he's sort of that help man on the weak side, like, it's like having a second rim protector out there. Like, he just does a great job. So if Capella or if Okongwu is up defending, having Jalen Johnson around the rim is just this wonderful security blanket. He's just been really good, aware, and just play with this physical level that I don't know that it's a surprise, but it's something that you had to see. And now that I've seen it, I believe in it.
The biggest difference you've seen from the Quin Snyder coach Hawks versus the Nate McMillan coach Hawks on the court has been what?
I think offensively, the shot quality has gotten better. One of the things that they do, especially with the starting group, is that there's a lot more attacking from an angle instead of from the middle of the floor. Like the actions that Trey and Clint Capella will do will come from the middle of the floor. They used to come more from the middle of the floor under Nate. For a second. Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're okay.
They used to work from the middle of the floor a lot under Nate. Now it's Trey and Clint, a lot more dribble handoff, a lot more coming in from an angle. And that helps some players and harms others. I think it was a little bit of an adjustment for Trey. Changes his passing angles a little bit, and he's getting a little better flow now than he had at the beginning of the season. I think for DeJounte, it's great. And for other players like Sadiq, DeAndre Hunter, it's great because if Trey and Clint are working on one side of the floor, when you swing the ball to the other side of the floor, suddenly they have more space than they used to have. So early in the season, it seemed like that was really advantageous for DeJounte. I think the player for whom it's most difficult is Clint. I think he's really sort of struggled offensively, not being in the middle of the floor. I think it, just sort of math and hypotenuse and right angle geometry. Like it's a longer distance, it seems like, on some of these plays where he's not slipping the screen. He's like holding the screen a little bit longer, and he gets a little bit behind on the pick and roll, and he just doesn't have the lightning quick attacks at the rim that he used to have in Nate's offense. Now it takes a little bit longer for him to get there. And so I think, at times, especially for Clint, I don't think it's as big a problem for Onyeka. I think he's a little more comfortable. I think Onyeka's passing helps him out in these situations as well, too, because it's not a get a shot at the rim or bust kind of play with Onyeka like it is for Clint. But I think it's a struggle for Clint Capella offensively, trying to come in from an angle on these plays that take a little longer to develop. And, in like the Boston game a few days ago, they were kind of just trapping Trey and say, Clint, do whatever you want. We've got a big guy guarding the corner shooter who will meet you at the rim if you get there. But anything between the 3-point line and the rim, you can have whatever you want. And, midway through the third quarter, Snyder took him out and he didn't come back in again. So, I think they've got to figure out how to make things work for Capella offensively. But other than that, by and large, I think the shot quality in the Quin Snyder era is better than what it is for Nate McMillan, for everybody except for Clint.
I like it. Final question here for you, Kevin. I don't know if a trade's likely. I don't know what you would give up. Capella and Trey just have unbelievable chemistry still. Like, even with what you're talking about with Capella and the adjustment there, like, there are still moments where you're like, man, Trey doesn't even have to look at Capella ever again, and he'll find him. Like, they just have this.
Yeah,
they just
were
have
on the
something
same
special
page last night. In this first game. And
you just watch it, and that's why I've always been, when Hawks fans have thrown Capella and trade rumors, I'm like, Trey's gonna have to sign off on this. Trey is gonna be involved because Trey is so close to Capella. Like they just have a connection, and I've always been kind of dubious. And Onyeka hasn't really run with it. Like he hasn't shown you enough to be like, yeah, he can be the 36-minute guy at the 5. We can get a little bit thinner at the 5, and we'll be okay. Like I don't know what the move is because Jalen's made the jump, and you don't want to take any minutes from him. You have DeAndre Hunter still hanging around, like DeJounte and Trey are obviously locked in. I don't know. Like the Pascal Siakam stuff never really made sense to me from a basketball fit standpoint, but it also seemed like he wouldn't be happy in this kind of scenario, in this kind of offense, and with a lot of mouths to feed with these guys. And I also think would hurt Jalen Johnson's development at this point with what he can ultimately be with this group. I don't know. Do you see a busy trade deadline for them in a couple months, or do you think Quinn and company are going to ride this out and just kind of see what they have for the full season?
I mean, it does seem like a lot of it would hinge on what you think you could get out of a Kongwu if his role were elevated.
Yeah.
And, he's got 2 things to figure out. And other than that, he's a magnificent basketball player. Like, it's just a world of difference when he's on offense compared to when Clint is on offense. Just the level of passing, just all the little nuances of footwork and sort of presenting yourself as a pass target. He's just a wonderful offensive basketball player and a great defender too. The 2 things he has to figure out is, we've talked about the defensive scheme and how the big is higher up the floor. 2 seasons ago, Okongwu had a lot of challenges with defensive rebounding. And Travis Schlenk, when he was the GM, almost called him out on it. Okongwu has to be a better defensive rebounder. And he said that in an offseason. Okongwu comes back and was a better defensive rebounder. Like, he did get better at it. Now he's got the challenge of elevating it again in this new scheme, because now he's higher up the floor. He's trying to get these defensive rebounds where he's, in a lot of cases, has the outside position instead of the inside position because he's coming from higher up the floor. And that's been a big challenge for him. They have just hemorrhaged offensive rebounds with Okongwu out there. But a lot of times you can see the challenge. He's a 6'8" guy. He's being really aggressive, but, he just doesn't have the position coming from where he's coming from. It works great when Jalen's out there with him. But when he's not out there, it gets ugly. So, they need either Okongwu to get better. They need Johnson to get healthy. They maybe need another rebounding power forward. They got a couple guys in College Park down here who look like, at least halfway decent rebounders. I don't think that they're going to be elevated to the rotation anytime soon, but it is something that they're good at. But they've got to get, some more rebounding out of the 4 position until Johnson gets healthy.
I like it. Kevin, what can the good folks check out from you across the internet and ATL 29 this week?
Yeah, that's it. ATL and 29 podcast. It's, we're not an everyday group. It's once or twice a week, trying to analyze a couple of games at a time and take a, like you mentioned at the top, take that wide philosophical outlook and give a breakdown of what's happening.
It's great. I cannot encourage it enough, not just for Hawks fans, but for everybody on YouTube and any basketball fan is better off listening to Kevin and Glenn talk hoops for an hour. It's good. I very much enjoy it, and I appreciate you doing great work, Kevin, covering the team and all that good stuff. So have yourself a great rest of your day, and let's do this again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Chase.